So, if I may, I'll record this session, if you don't mind, Professor.
That's fine.
Thank you. I would like to welcome you, Professor, and Professor Shamsan, for accepting our invitation for today. Thank you so much. And we are so pleased to have you with us here today in an expert dose. Professor, I would like to ask you at first about your beginnings in the pharmacy profession. Why did you choose pharmacy as a profession for you? And did it affect your personality and upgrowing?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer that question. But before I start out, I don't know what the culture is in Saudi Arabia, but do you guys typically turn on your cameras?
Well, I would like to, but I don't have in my computer now. I'm sorry. If anybody would like to turn his camera or her camera on, I'll ask them.
That's
privately.
all right.
I'm sorry.
I'll look at myself then, which is fine. But would love to get to meet you. There's no better opportunity than getting to know students and interacting with.
Yeah, I wish you would visit Saudi and do a live session with you or a lecture with you. But yeah, as you know, it's kind of hard in COVID days.
Yeah. So I just as background, I've actually been to Saudi Arabia twice. The first time to the Riyadh area, I was speaking at Security Forces Hospital then. Mm-hmm. And then obviously visited some of the other hospitals and King Saud. And then was back there and visited Jeddah, was at Kaust, and then came down. One of my good colleagues was the director of pharmacy then at the time at King Saud Hospital, and had a chance to meet with again leaders from the School of Pharmacy, and I'm looking forward to my next opportunity to come and visit Saudi Arabia. It's I really find that area of the world beautiful. I enjoy the people, enjoy the food. I miss some good dates, and so hopefully the opportunity to restore travel will be there, and I'd love to meet many of you in person.
Hopefully, inshallah.
Yeah, and so your question was about how I got into pharmacy as a career.
Yep.
I guess I call myself a second generation pharmacist. So my father was a pharmacist, but growing up, that really was never my plan. And the way pharmacy education is in the U.S. is, generally speaking, you obtain a couple years of sort of prerequisites. And so when I went into the university, I had thought about engineering. I thought about medicine. So when I came in as a freshman, I actually started out as a physics major, and quickly recognized that while I really liked physics, and I realized there's not a lot of people that do like physics because of the math and the science associated with it, I didn't see myself in a laboratory for the rest of my career. And so from there, I decided, well, maybe instead of physics, I'll go into medicine. And so was doing the prerequisites, and back that time in the U.S., the predominant degree was the BS degree, and there were some post-baccalaureate PharmD programs, but they were small, and that was not the traditional way that pharmacists were educated. So it was an extra year of study, but you could easily find a job and put yourself back through through pharmacy school. And so that was my intent, was to go into pharmacy, spend an extra year, but the whole goal was to leverage that into medicine, to and to pay for my way through school with a pharmacist job on the side. But I ended up getting into pharmacy school, and once I got in there, I loved it, and really enjoyed it. The people I met, the things I was doing, the things that I was studying, and I didn't, at that point in time, I didn't feel like medicine was where I needed to be. And so at that point in time, I ended up sort of deciding no to medicine, and I'm going to stay on in pharmacy. And as I was finishing up my final year in pharmacy school, during the time I was in pharmacy school, the U.S. made a decision to move towards an all PharmD program. And so the year I graduated was going to be the last year that they would have a post-baccalaureate PharmD degree. And so I was faced with entering the workforce with just a BS in pharmacy, knowing that all graduates after me was going to have a PharmD degree. And that I knew was going to lead me to a situation where doors could be closing because I wasn't as educated from a credentials perspective than people after me. And so I decided to apply and got accepted to our last post-baccalaureate PharmD degree here at UNC. There was about 20 students in the class. And from there, I fell in love with clinical pharmacy. And so decided I wanted to do a pharmacy residency because I was excited and desired to be a clinical pharmacist. So I got selected to spend a year at Duke University Hospital and did my pharmacy residency there. And my plan was to be a clinical pharmacist to take care of patients. So I'll sort of stop that story there. I know I answered your question a little bit longer, but
no, that's totally fine.
Let you take it wherever you want to go.
Funny thing, Professor, your batch was the last batch with a bachelor degree. My batch is the first batch where all of us is a PharmD student.
Yeah.
So the previous batch before us had both of them. Then we changed the setting in our college to be all PharmD students. And also, I think actually we can all relate to your story about the, I would say, choosing between medicine and pharmacy. We all had that wish of medicine or a clinical working field. And then we found pharmacy and got addicted to it. And yeah, it's like our all stories combined together.
That's right. Well, you know, pharmacy is one big family, and even though we might live in different countries and speak different languages, what we strive to do and our path to get there are pretty similar.
Professor, looking at your CV, I know you got these questions kind of a lot, but you work at multiple clinics and departments in your career, like pediatric clinics and geriatrics. Can you tell us what was the goal of trying many different departments, and what was your ambition in being a practitioner in all of these departments?
Yeah, so that's a great segue to what I sort of think about in my career, and I put accidental in a variety of different buckets that I have sort of gone through, and so let me, I ended up being what I would call an accidental pharmacy administrator as sort of my first sort of bucket of my career. So I mentioned to you I was focused on being a clinical pharmacist. That's what I wanted to do. And when I graduated my residency, I took a job at UNC Hospitals, which was which was never my plan coming out of my residency, but through a variety of different circumstances and situations, I took it. And I got into the position, and I kept asking questions of, why do we do things this way? Why don't we do it this way? This way doesn't seem that good. I think we have better ways to do it. And so I caution you to sort of be careful when you're in your job, maybe not asking all those questions, because at some point somebody's going to say, well, if you can do it better, do it. And at that point in time, I felt like our distribution systems, our operational efficiency within the pharmacy department was not optimal. And so as a individual trying to take care of patients, there were too many missing doses. I felt like the way we did things, they were slow and inefficient. And so about a year after I started, the position of central pharmacy manager opened up, and they had consolidated down some positions, and I was led to, that position was posted. And so a couple people said, well, since you think you can do things better, why don't you put your name in for that position? Because you seem to have all these great ideas. And, I thought that was an opportunity for me to sort of try something new, try something different, and see if I could improve the environment that we use to take care of patients. And so I put my name in. I was selected. And one day, going from being peers to lots of people, I had them all reporting to me. And so I had a lot of energy. I had a lot of good ideas. I didn't have much training and in what I was doing. And so I ended up realizing that I needed to go back and get additional training and degrees. So I went back and got a master's degree while I was working full-time as a pharmacy administrator. And so I was in charge of all the distribution services within our organization. What ended up happening from there was a couple years later, we opened up a new women's and children's hospital, a neurosciences hospital, and we were looking for a new assistant director to sort of lead that. And so I took responsibility for that, and also had responsibility for our cancer hospital, our IV room. And so that sort of got me into a variety of different service lines, not as much being a direct patient care provider, but having responsibility and oversight to that. I then, sort of from there transitioned to leading all of our clinical services, and then leading our ambulatory care services. So I leveraged in each of those positions that clinical background and training. So if I would not have been a practicing clinical pharmacist, had board certification, I'm not sure I would have been as good of a manager for pediatrics or geriatrics or ambulatory care services than if I would have gone straight out and not sort of done those additional steps. And so my career then as a pharmacy administrator, the accidental administrator, like I like to say, was really providing sort of responsibilities and establishing a variety of different experiences for our hospital pharmacy department.
So do you think working in a clinical setting gave you opportunities in pharmacy in general, way different than working in or being a faculty in university or the dean of pharmacy college in UNC?
I think it was the groundwork or the foundation that created all other opportunities for me. because so you mentioned Saudi Arabia has moved towards an all PharmD, which I know and I'm very supportive of. And I mentioned the U.S. did that about 20 years ago. And why did the U.S. do that, and why did Saudi Arabia do that? Well, first of all, we had a patchwork of different degrees out there. So back when I graduated from pharmacy school, if you were going to a pharmacy school, let's say in California, they were graduating all their students with a PharmD degree. For those of us who were graduating on the East Coast, it was a bachelor's degree. So we had a patchwork of different degrees across the pharmacy profession. But I think the bigger driver besides that was a recognition that pharmacists really weren't just dispensers of medication. Pharmacists were really there to ensure patients had the best use of the medications that they took. And so that led to a variety of different experiences on how do you better train pharmacists to take advantage of the patient care needs, whether that's in a retail or community pharmacy, whether that's in the hospital, or whether that's in some different setting. And that, from my perspective, sort of forced us to increase the amount of education that we provided our pharmacy students, because at least the hospital setting, the expectations that physicians and others had for them wasn't being provided by pharmacy education today. And so that's sort of where we've gone with pharmacy education and why now. So I believe that the basis, the foundation of pharmacy is ensuring patients have optimal outcomes for the medications that they are on. Mm-hmm. And we have to ensure individually that as we engage and work with patients, that we're not making medication errors, we're actually preventing them, and we're making sure that those medications are doing what they need to be doing for whatever the reasons the patients are taking them. And so for me, when I became a pharmacy administrator and I wasn't directly taking care of patients every day, it still didn't mean that I couldn't have a clinical mindset. And so when I was setting up systems on how to distribute medications or how IVs were being prepared or technologies that we were introducing, the whole reason why we were doing this was we want to take care of patients better. We want to optimally ensure that clinical pharmacist on the floor has the tools, resources necessary to optimize those patients' medication therapy outcomes. And that became the role for the pharmacy administrator. And as I transitioned into academia and took on additional academic responsibilities, again, my same focus is how do I prepare pharmacy students or future pharmacy administrators to put the patient at the center for whatever they do. And so for me, the best way I was able to do that was have a strong understanding of the patient care process, clinical pharmacy. That journey worked well for me. It's not the only way one can transition. And there's lots of other paths where people have sort of transitioned to those responsibilities, but that's at least worked for me.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to ask you about the residency program you were president of. How do you see the future for clinical pharmacists? And is there any important set of skills that any applicant should have for the clinical pharmacy?
Yeah, so specifically for residency?
Yeah.
Yeah, so why do a residency, and why are residencies very important in the U.S. and obviously growing in importance in Saudi Arabia? And part of the reason why is our pharmacy education training doesn't fully prepare you for the demands of at least a hospital, and I'll speak specifically for a hospital. What that means is that medications have gotten more difficult to manage, require more competency that one can give you in a pharmacy degree program. And so I'm not interested in having you have more time in a pharmacy degree program. I would much rather have you do a residency, and we can shorten the educational time frame. And so then a residency becomes taking your book knowledge and applying that to a patient that you weren't able to do in experiential education settings. So that's if you're wanting to sort of go further in your patient care responsibilities, that's why you might be interested in a residency. Now, preparing oneself for residency, they are competitive. There's no doubt about that. And really your preparation should start early in the training process. And so things when I'm interviewing residency candidates, and when I'm looking at residency candidates, I hope to find individuals that have strong communication skills. I'm looking for individuals that are confident in what they do. They've got good knowledge base, but more importantly, it's can they solve problems? So it's very frequently you'll be up on rounds and a physician might look at you and say, Stephen, what would you do here? Or how would you manage this situation? And it doesn't really line up very well with the clinical trials or the data that you've sort of thought through. And you then, as a clinician, have to think quickly, have to respond with confidence and communicate what your recommendations are. Now, you may or may not know it at all points of time, and you might have to sort of say, I want to get back to you. But for me, those interactions with that physician plants a seed that says, pharmacy you can depend upon. They're professional, they're high quality, they're knowledgeable, or, wow, they don't know anything more than I do. And so why would I go to a pharmacist and ask them a question? To me, that residency sort of rounds out your knowledge in all of those other skill sets so that you're able to competently take the best care of patients and communicate that to whoever. So those are things that I look at in a residency candidate. And so how do they communicate with me on the interview? What did they do during pharmacy school to sort of prepare themselves for today? So were they a leader? Did they do extracurricular activities? How did they manage their time while they were doing all those things? Did their grades suffer? Did they manage things well? Those are all sort of things that I try to run through when I interview pharmacy residency candidates, because I can look at their CV and say, okay, they graduated from pharmacy school, they had good grades, they did all these different things, but in reality, there was a lot of other things that they didn't do, and they could have done if they wanted to. And so those are some of the things that I try to look at when I'm interviewing residency candidates. But everybody has a different lens in which they look at, and they sort of operate based upon their personal lens.
Do you have any kind of highlights and lowlights of working in a clinical settings?
Oh, there's always, highlights are when you help somebody out. If somebody comes to you and they have a side effect, and it's because one of their medications, or they came back to see you sometime later, and they say, well, you saved my life, or I feel better than I've ever felt, or I've been really trying to work on those instructions, or even in the hospital setting, I've had family members pull me aside and say, thank you for caring for my loved one. You spent 30 minutes sitting there answering their questions or educating them about how to use an inhaler or all these things. And that just gets you excited, because that's why we're doing it all. I would hope somebody would spend the time with one of my loved ones to do that.
Yep.
Just like I'm spending my time with somebody else to do that. And going into a patient's room to talk to them, you never know how long it's going to be. You never know where the question's going to go. But that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we're doing. So to me, those are the things that keep you going. And then there are times where you fully believe that this is the best recommendation, but the physician doesn't want to take it. There are times where you don't feel like you have the amount of resources or the time needed to do what's expected out of you, and you feel like you're not giving quality to what you have to achieve. Those are some of the lowlights where you're just like, is it worth it? Can I continue operating or living in this setting? And then you get a highlight that says, yeah, there is a reason why I continue to do that, and that'll keep me going for a little while. So you have to, you sort of have all these balances in and out of the time period.
I think also for myself, one of the highlights that I think it's implemented or being implemented and nowadays is the kind of shift of the physician not giving you all the time that he can give, but the clinical pharmacist is always there in his office to be there for you or talk to you about your condition or about your medication. I think that's a good thing. We all wish the physicians give us the time that we need, but there's somebody else in same, I would say, expertise or learning expertise that can also talk to us, and it's thankfully us, the pharmacists.
Yeah, I agree, and that's for you as a pharmacy student.
Mm-hmm.
That's an important thing to remember. Did somebody give you extra time because you were there helping to train and mentor you? And that's all about giving back. And so when you become that clinical pharmacist and you're thinking,
hopefully
another pharmacy student coming and asking questions, remember those people that invested in you, so it also helps you to want to give back.
Inshallah. So Professor, as a researcher and a reviewer in many journals, can you tell us how do you evaluate the level of scientific research nowadays, especially during COVID? It's kind of a hustle now.
Yeah. So I do publish a lot. And I haven't sort of talked about my academic career, but I didn't expect to become an academician. So I'm also an accidental academician, and I can talk about that if you want. But I do publish a lot. So because I publish a lot, I feel the need to review a lot for peer-reviewed journals. And my observation, generally speaking, our pharmacists aren't well trained to be great researchers. But it doesn't mean that pharmacists can't become great researchers. It's just the way our educational system is set up that that we don't always have the opportunities and the time to develop those skills. But we need to do a better job of communicating back in the literature to sort of ask questions, look for the data to answer those questions, and then share that information publicly. And so what traditionally we utilize is the peer review process. So I send a manuscript into a journal, and then peers of mine that I don't know will review it, and then we'll make a determination whether it should or should not be published for that journal. And then they send comments back. And if I have spent hours, months of my life dedicating toward that research project and I submit it, and then one of my peers says, this stuff is terrible, we should never evaluate it or review it or publish it, that can be very deflating.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, if I can't do it right and do it well, I shouldn't do it. And the first thing, and I've had those feelings of frustrations, is you can either sort of say, okay, well, everybody's right, I'm not very good at it, or I can say, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to get better at it, I'm going to be better at it. So my first sort of rule of thought is, when I'm reviewing a paper, is I want to encourage people. It might not be that great, it might actually be terrible, but I'm not going to sort of say that. I'm going to try to encourage them on how to make the paper better and how to improve it, because I want each of us to grow and want to do more. And so it is a tough process, and it does take a lot of time, but the rewards are wonderful. When you're walking down a hallway of a meeting and somebody comes and says, I read your paper, or I recently read this and I really liked it, thanks for doing it. Back to your question about the highs and lows of clinical pharmacy, that's the highs and lows of publishing, is when, lows are when you get rejected or people don't find value in something you spent a lot of time on. But the highs are when you see your name come out on a paper, or somebody comes and actually said they read it. That's really important. Now, your question was really around COVID, and is research better, research different? What I found is, early in COVID, when everybody was home, people started writing because they had all these projects they needed to get done. And so there was a flurry of a lot of publications going in. But now I think the publications are dry, because people haven't been able to get to their data or get access to research. So now I think is one of the best times to submit a manuscript for publication.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think they're needing them. So if you're wanting to finish one out now, obviously, I would always encourage you to make sure it's high quality. But that being said, I think there's not a whole lot of manuscripts being submitted compared to normal. So now might be the time strategically to submit it for publication. The other thing I'll just sort of mention is research is a team sport. You need to work with others, and you need to collaborate with others. And so if you don't have a mentor that are helping to develop and train, you try to find one. People that will read your manuscripts, people that will help you consult on study design, people that will give you feedback on how to make things better. All those things are important to helping think through and ensure that when you do all that work of collecting data, of researching it, that you have the optimal sort of study methodology to ensure that you have a high success rate for publication.
Mm-hmm. Professor, you just mentioned being us pharmacists not being trained well to be good researchers. Can you tell us what are some good the main qualities of being a good researcher is?
Yeah, I think that the two areas where I think pharmacists lack the most is study methodology and statistical analysis. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do it all and be the one that runs the statistics, but it means understanding which ones to do to analyze the data. So for example, if when you're starting a research project, the first thing you should ask yourself is, what's my research question? What am I wanting to answer? If you can't answer that question well, then you're going to do a lot of work on something that doesn't make a lot of sense. So when I meet with my graduate students and my residents, I always go back and ask them, okay, what is the research question that you're trying to answer? And if they struggle to define that, then I spend most of my time trying to work with them on that. Once you define your research question, then you have to sort of say, well, what methodology is best to answer that question? Is it a prospective study? Is it a retrospective study? Do I do a case control? Do I do paired match samples? How many data samples do I need to collect to be able to have a robust study? If you don't know a lot about methodology, then you could start down a research project that doesn't answer your research question. So you get to the end of it all and you're answering something completely different than what you wanted to answer on the front end. Or you do a lot of work and you don't have enough samples, or it just doesn't really work out. So you need to really sort of understand different types of methodology, but now others can help collaborate with you and sort of say, have you thought about this? Can you think about this? And then you get your methodology set up. Your next step is collecting your data. So however you wanted to set up your research project, you begin collecting data in that methodology. And then the last step is you get all your data. How are you going to assess and analyze it? And there's a lot of different research statistical tests that one can use. And so knowing which one to be done, to be able to assess it. Now, when I review a paper for a journal, those are the things that I'm going to look at. Is that a good, robust research question? Was the methodology correct? And did they analyze the data to come to the results appropriate? And if those things are yes, then you've got a strong paper that no matter the outcomes is probably going to get published. Versus if somebody has poor methodology, poor and analytical side of the data, or not a very good research question, many times I'm not going to recommend it for publication because you're not sure if it's a reproducible study or activity.
So, Professor, can I ask you about your innovations? The 4 innovations you included in your CV. Can you tell us more about them?
Yeah. So the third sort of I've shared my experience as an accidental administrator. I never expected to be a pharmacy administrator. I became an accidental academician, which and then the third one is an accidental entrepreneur or accidental innovator. And so the way I process and think is I'm always asking myself questions. You know, back to when I was, sort of the clinical pharmacist saying, why don't we do things better? Why can't we improve this? I've always also asked myself questions. Why don't we have better technologies, or why don't we have a better activity here? And many times is because nobody's ever spent the time working through this. And so years ago, I was so the first sort of the first company I formed. I'll sort of start the discussion there. But actually, I'll start before that. So when you're a pharmacy administrator, one of the things that I always want to do is garner more resources. I mean, more and more I hear my employees saying, Stephen, you're making us do so much. We don't have enough people to be able to do all this. So what's my job as administrator? Keep finding resources, keep finding people. And so you're writing business plans to start new activities, new services, with the hopes that the hospital is going to give you those resources. And many times they would. And then what's your job once you get those resources to execute against your plan? And if you're successful, then hopefully you can sort of gain more and more resources. And so for many, many years at UNC hospitals, we had a successive plan whereby we just continued to build and grow because we were able to demonstrate that we could deliver on those resources. And that by and large gives you a lot of confidence that you can come up with an idea, you can deliver on that idea, and then you can get more resources. So I was running our cancer hospital at the time, our cancer pharmacy at the time. And new data came out on things called closed system transfer devices, CSTDs. So I don't know what's used over there, but BD has Facile, EquiShield has a product called EquiShield, ICU Medical has products. But the whole idea was emerging data came up that when one prepared chemotherapy, the process of putting the needle into the syringe stopper was responsible for aerosolization of that chemotherapy inside that vial into the surfaces. That surfaces had contamination. I, as a pharmacy technician or pharmacist working in a pharmacy, would get exposed to that. It would be found in my urine or my blood, and I would be at risk for potential pro-carcinogenic effects from long-term exposure to low levels of chemotherapy. Well, as an administrator, I could never put my employees at a place of risk. And so I went through how do I best get that technology approved within our organization? And I kept asking, and I kept going forward with requests, and I kept getting denied. And so I'd heard about this company in Netherlands that would do surface white samples. And so what you would do is you would sort of take a wipe, and you would sort of wipe it amongst a hood or a floor or a checking counter in your cancer pharmacy, and then they would analyze whether there was chemotherapy on that wipe or not. And so we did a kit. I sent it off. 3 months later, I finally got the results back, and within a week we had gotten approval because it demonstrated there was high level of contamination on the wipe. And I thought about how effective that was, but I had to send it to the Netherlands. I had to ship it on dry ice, and it took 12 weeks for me to get that back. And I thought about how effective it was, and I said, wow, we need to have something like this here in the US, but if I'm going to do it, we need to not be able to ship it on dry ice, because that's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
And 3 months was way too long to get the results back. So I walked across, because our hospital and our school of pharmacy are across the street from each other. And I walked across to the school and knocked on a guy's door that I knew and said, I have this idea, but I don't know I don't have the skill set for analytical chemistry to be able to do this. He said, well, interestingly enough, there's a guy down the hallway. It's his first week here at UNC. So he introduced myself to him, and he said, well, I can do it analytically, but I don't understand the need. And I said, well, I fully understand the need, but I can't do it analytically. And so we paired up, and we created a company called Chemoglow, where we do wipe samples all over the world for hospitals. And we get the results back in 3 weeks. We send it on room temperature, and we've continued to demonstrate that hospitals that don't follow best practices can lead to contamination within their workplace of chemotherapy. And now USP 800 recommends that twice a year a hospital should be monitoring for contamination within the workplace. And that got to show me that that the opportunities for taking a question or an experience that you saw in your pharmacy can be turned into a sort of entrepreneurial activity. And we filed a patent. I never would have thought in my life I would have ever have a patent against my name as a practicing pharmacist, but that opportunity presented itself. And then I've been working on a different one now, which we filed a patent on. And the whole concept is around management or measurement of chemotherapy doses. I mean, this was a while ago, probably almost a decade ago. I had a company come and present that they wanted us to implement the technology in the workplace, and they used something called Gravametrics. And the whole idea by Gravametrics is that if I'm preparing a chemotherapy dose, I measure the dose in my syringe. I put the syringe on a scale, and I weigh the weight of an empty syringe. I prepare the dose. I weigh the weight of a full syringe, and I can decrement those two weights to find out the weight of the actual drug that I measured. And if I know the specific gravity or density of that drug, I can actually turn that into a volume. And so if the volume of the measured chemotherapy that the physician prescribed is 5 mLs, and I measured 4.5 mLs, that tells me that I'm a half ml off, which is about 10% of the dose, 10% less. Is that good or is that bad? Well, when they were presenting this technology, I was like, I never thought that I assumed what we pulled up was always exactly what the physician prescribed. Yep. And what I found out is there's errors, there's some errors in syringes in the manual measurement process. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do a study on this. And so I got one of my graduate students, we did a study that demonstrated there was significant variability in the data. And so I took this data to the head of our cancer hospital, and I said, you know, I run a good pharmacy here, but I wasn't expecting this to come out at all. And he said, well, Stephen, 1, publish the data, and 2, come up with a better way to handle it. So I started working with a group of biomedical engineering students, and we came up with a better way to manage chemotherapy. And so I call it the Precise or the Precise Syringe. And it really uses the volumetric method or a different way, non-gravimetric, to measure syringes. And we can do it highly accurate, highly precise. And so we, again, filed a patent, have a patent in the US and Europe for it. And I'm in the process of trying to raise money to bring this device onto the marketplace. So that's sort of, again, not an experience that I ever thought I would have, but it was because I was coming back and asking questions. What can be done better? How can we do this better? And what I found out is others weren't asking those questions, but those problems were in all hospitals. And so it's not just something unique to UNC or Stephen Eckel's areas. It was really something that everybody struggled with, which creates an opportunity. And so not everybody is set up to be an entrepreneur, and I don't think I am either. But the opportunities to really help develop new technologies and new activities exists for people trained just like you and me.
This is actually a scary thing to think about, especially with the neurotherapeutic window drugs like chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a missed dose. Nevertheless, it's always been a missed dose.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, it's you know, to get into it further, you get down to smaller volumes. Mm-hmm. So let's say for pediatrics or you know, volumes, and I carry this technology with me, and I'm happy to show it to you.
Thank you so much.
You know, this happens to be a 1 ml syringe, and the way syringes are made, and I know they don't teach us in pharmacy school because I never learned it, and I've had to understand it. But this the syringe barrel is what they is sort of injection molded. So it's a mold, they stick the plastic in, it's very consistent in the way they measure it. And then on top of it, and you can actually, on this syringe, there's no markings on it because my hands have been using it so much, but they come and they heat print syringe markings on here. Mm-hmm. And there's allowed to be a tolerance, a variability associated with that. And so, you know, in a 1 ml syringe, if I'm measuring 0.1 ml, there's allowed to be a 17% tolerance or error in the measurement of that dose. That's just standard. But to your point, is 17% more or less of a drug for a neonate or somebody else? Is that right or is that wrong? Well, not always no, but in the idea of precision medicine, you want to make sure that you get closely what the physician did. And so what we ended up figuring out, and we use something similar to an electronic caliper, is that we can measure this distance and turn this distance into a volume that's in there. And so this is a prototype. And so this is the percentage. And you'll notice on here, we've got a digital reader. I take a 1 ml syringe, I slip it in here, I zero out the reader, and then all I do is pull up and down on the syringe plunger rod, and it's pulling it here, and it's telling you a volume that's in there. So if I want to measure 0.2 mLs, I have 0.2 mLs with a high degree of precision and accuracy that I would never have gotten if I would have measured it on my own. And so that's the percentage, and that's what we're trying to do.
Can I ask you when is the time that we can use it in any hospital, or can see this innovation in any hospital, hopefully?
Well, I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, me too.
So I have some regular meetings with the director of pharmacy at King Faisal. So I shared it with him the last time. So you never know. It might be first in Saudi Arabia than it is in the other place.
Hopefully. Inshallah.
Yeah.
Abdulaziz, can I interrupt and ask a
Absolutely,
question?
Dr.
I got so intrigued with that. Stephen, like I won't call it stepping toes, like I'm coming from pharmaceutics background, but that's fine. We can work together on such a thing. Yeah. So I always consider UNC as a role model for many pharmacy schools, and what I'm trying to especially taking the advantage of this meeting, I want to try to inspire our student about how pharmacy, although it looks like it works in different directions, like we have an industry setting, we have regulation setting, we have pharmacy practice setting, we have community setting. They are still interrelated, and they are interlocked and surrounding that precious product that we all make and give to our precious patient. So the concept of patient safety and patient care, it revolves around that philosophy where we teach and we do all of our research. And I see that this was adopted into the way UNC School of Pharmacy is set up. So the nice way that you express your school in your website, that stage 1 is discovery, stage 2 is delivery, stage 3 is optimization, stage 4 is practice, and stage 5 is assessment. And how you are taking the student, just like the drug development cycle, you are taking the student through that drug development cycle. Yep. So this is what I'm trying to infuse in our student, but I think you can inspire all of us, with that. And this invention is a vivid example that coming from a practitioner, going back to the lab, trying to, do bench work that would come up with a problem that would reflect directly on patient and will be, advantages for direct patient care. So if you can tell us about, the philosophy of this, what UNC is thinking about when they, switch to that model, and how we all can learn from this.
Yeah, a great question, and let me sort of try to answer that in a semi-brief way that makes sense. So one of the mottos we have here is everything begins and ends with the patient in mind. So whether you're a pharmaceutical scientist, whether you're a clinical pharmacist, or whether you work in the pharmaceutical industry, everything we do begins and ends with the patient in mind. And if we can remember that aspect, we can be much more successful to focus our education or our research on things that matter, things that make a difference. So that's sort of number one. And I think number two is collaboration is the key to success. So if I'm a medicinal chemist, I might be able to synthesize a drug molecule, but I don't have the expertise and knowledge to move that to a finished product, or I don't have the expertise and knowledge to say, does this compound, would it matter? Would it have a market or a perspective from that? Or me on the pharmacist side, I might sort of see, gosh, we need to have more, we need to develop something here. I might see that because I sort of experience those problems every day, but I don't have the knowledge or expertise how to do that. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is, and I think UNC has done it well, is promote a aspect of collaboration. And how do I know who within our school that has expertise in a problem that I see that I want to explore, and or secondarily, our scientists who are developing things, how do they come to a understanding or recommendation? This is important. How do I come alongside with people that understand it a little bit better? So we've organized our school and our teaching around, you know, sort of people that are like. So we have 5 divisions in our school, starting around what we call chemical biology and medicinal chemistry. So that's sort of our, you know, our sort of discovery piece. And then we sort of have our delivery group we call our molecular pharmaceutics, which is traditionally your sort of pharmaceutics individuals. And then we have our translation group, which is our pharmacotherapy and experimental therapeutics. And then we have sort of an outcomes group, and then we have our practice group. And so, you know, we have 5 divisions in our school. That's how we've sort of subdivided ourselves. But the way an innovation or a way a discovery starts is it moves through those cycles. And not one person can fully recognize that they're going to be successful going all the way. And so it requires us to collaborate. The other thing that we've tried to do in our culture is instead of just publishing papers, how do we do something that matters? How do we help solve some of the biggest problems that are out there? How do we challenge ourselves to be bigger and to go after dreams that nobody can do alone? And when you start thinking through that culture, and when you begin thinking about how do I do that, you recognize then I can't do it by myself. And so it forces us to come together with teams and to think differently and to think bigger and to think strategic about accomplishing activities. And finally, the other sort of idea that we've tried to do is that we've tried to invest in terms of, instead of having one person do this, one person do this, one person do this, how do we bring a team of people to do this? How do we bring a team of people to do that? Because having more people actually allows us to do more things through synergistic properties, as opposed to what can we accomplish with one individual. So to answer your question, that's sort of the way that we have structured it. And so then you look at our PharmD curriculum, you know, we work through that and we think through that. And so we want to make sure any pharmacy student gets that basic understanding of the drug development cycle. But we recognize some of our students will be practicing pharmacists, some will go work in the pharmaceutical industry, some will go work into research. And we need all of them to be sort of involved, engaged, to understand it all if they're going to be successful at what they do.
Professor, I have 2 little questions, if you don't mind, and then we'll open the doors for any student who would like to participate about asking a question. So the first one is, as a student now, do you think there's a need for us to grow our social skills and how to present ourselves to people, how to deal with, I would say, relations in our work field or in between students?
Yeah, so I've heard it stated in the U.S. And I won't say it's for any other place, but in the U.S., 75% of pharmacists are introverts. but in the US, 75% of physicians are extroverts.
Oh.
So if the idea of pharmacists are introverts, we don't want to talk to the patient. We want to stand behind the counter. We don't want to engage with people. We want to sort of just follow orders. Well, if we're going to believe that that our profession is a clinical profession, and we need to engage more and more with patients, we need to engage more and more with physicians, then in reality, we're going to have to step outside of our comfort zone.
Yep.
And we're going to have to engage with people, and we're going to have to communicate, and we're going to have to be much more of an extrovert. And so, yeah, short answer to your question is absolutely, we have to be a better communicator, because whether I'm on rounds and the physician asks me a question, whether I'm in the community pharmacy and a patient comes up or I get a call, I'm going to have to use verbal communication. I'm going to have to present myself as a professional in a way that ensures that I'm able to effectively communicate what that patient or that physician needs at that point in time.
Thank you, Doctor. So for my last question is, I have always thought of this thing that I think it's always important to ask my seniors, you and Professor Aus, about any advices that they would like to say, or any tips and tricks after all these years of experience in this field. If you may, the Professor Aus, you can also answer this question.
Well, you know, Abdulaziz, my best answer is to echo your question, and both of these questions goes to Stephen. Like I said, we
as you both wish.
Take advantage of his presence and listen from him.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you sort of 4 reflections based upon sort of my career journey. And I would agree, Abdulaziz, I'd love to hear from any other classmates here, whether they have questions. And so I'd love to hear from them. But 1, recognize that you will never know where your career will go.
Mm-hmm.
I shared accidental on a lot of different steps that I went through.
Yep.
And so even when we finished up, I never thought I would develop a medical device, never thought I would have a patent, but steps led me to that. And so if you sort of understand you don't know where your career is going to go, then you need to be open to new experiences, and you need to never stop learning. So that's my first challenge to everybody, is take full advantage of that. Secondly, invest in people. It's all about relationships, whether it's relationship with the patient, relationship with the medical team, relationship with coworkers, relationship with students. Always be ready to invest in people, because you never know where they might end up and where you might need to take advantage of that relationship in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, I've learned that leadership is a learned skill. You're not born leaders, you become leaders. And so as you take these steps and as you engage with individuals, we need leadership within pharmacy, no matter where we go, whether in the industry, whether it's in the patient care setting, whether it's in academia. And each of us can become leaders by learning that skill set. And finally, I mentioned to you, remember the patient. The patient is the reason we do all of this stuff. And we have the ability to go to pharmacy school. And we have the ability to have drugs to invest in people. It's because we're treating patients. So you can't ever forget the patient, because if you do, then everything that we've built toward and gone toward is gone. So 4 thoughts from me that I'll sort of leave with you, and then see what kind of questions I can help answer from the students.
Thank you so much, Professor. Everybody, if you would like to ask anything, you may now, but please first raise your hand so I can see you. Professor Dr. I'm sorry, Bender would like to ask you a question. You can unmute yourself, Bender. Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Stevens, for all the great information. I have a question. Can clinical pharmacists work in the ambulatory or like in the Red Cross in the US?
Is the question is, can pharmacists work in those settings?
Yeah, like with the paramedic and the EMT and the physician.
There's no reason why they can't. Let me sort of start out there, but I don't think we have great examples of pharmacists that are riding on the ambulance or flying in the helicopter. But let me sort of share where we do place pharmacists in those settings. One of which is in the emergency room. One of the growing areas that we have pharmacist training and pharmacist opportunities in the emergency room. And then you had mentioned the Red Cross. The other areas where pharmacists are growing in importance is on disaster preparedness and disaster response. And so if we have a big natural disaster, or we have the pandemic, pharmacists have taken a massive role in vaccinating. The majority of people in the US that have been vaccinated against COVID got their shot from a pharmacist. Fantastic public health opportunity. And so disaster preparedness, emergency rooms, are all public health, are all opportunities that pharmacists are growing in and demonstrating that they deserve to be there and that they provide a meaningful role and activity.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Other questions? And if you don't have a microphone, you can also type it into the chat and I'm happy to answer it.
Go ahead, Lena.
Hello, doctor. First, thank you for your time. My question is, have you ever been given advice that remains stuck in your head for a long time? Specifically,
say again?
Have you ever been given advice that remains stuck in your head for a long time?
Have I ever been given advice that stick in my head for a long time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a finished product. I'm always learning and growing and developing. And so many times I listen to people that are speaking into me or providing me advice on how to do things better or what I could have done differently. Or more importantly, I'm always going out and asking that. So I've got mentors that I have that I still reach out to that give me advice and perspective on how to do things. And the other thing I've learned over time what my strengths and weaknesses are and areas that I'm good at and things that I'm not good at. And so I try to bring alongside my team are things that people that are complementary to me that recognize areas that I can grow in and utilize that for strategy and success.
Well, Stephen, I see that you are picking up also terminology from the industry. You are not a finished product, so this is.
That's right.
So, I don't know if this is a convergent path or.
That's right. I'm still an API. That's right.
Wow! That's advanced pharmaceutics. That's great. Well, this has been great. I encourage all students, like if you have any question, on top of your head, like Dr. Stephen, he has expertise in beside pharmacy and academia. Like he can give you advices also toward how to pick, a career path. How what kind of set of skills you work on, anything that you might want to ask about. Even if your opportunities to continue postgraduate education in the States, for instance, or he is also aware of other systems. He's aware of the British system. He's in good collaboration with UCL. So there are many things that come up in your mind you might want to ask. So please don't hesitate.
Yeah, and I put in the chat my email address, so that if anybody wants to reach out, if they've got questions, I'm happy to respond and provide any advice that I can.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your email with us.
Doctor, sorry, another question. How do you balance between your personal life and your work life?
Oh, that's time management is always difficult. So I've got two boys, 12 and 14, and they love to play what we call here in the U.S. soccer. And so I spend a lot of my evenings and my weekends driving them around to soccer games and soccer practice. And I had, obviously, before the pandemic, did a lot of traveling, and I definitely hope to get back to that. It's important. It's difficult, and you have to be strategic in how you do things and how you're efficient on doing stuff. And so, so for me, the way I do things is early morning is my time. So that's when I work out and get exercise and spend time reflecting. And I do that before anybody wakes up in our house, because I know once my kids and my wife wakes up to when they go to bed, it's hard for me to do that and feel comfortable doing that. So that's sort of, you have to come up with a schedule that works for you and works for your family. And then beyond that, there's a lot of things that I would like to be doing, but I just can't do because of family obligations and what's important to me. And at some point I'll be able to get back to them. So that's, and then, when I'm at work, I'm at work, and, I try to respond to my emails and balance as much as I can. And if not, then I might have to do it after the kids and everybody goes to bed, or when they're doing homework or something else. But you just have to, for me, it's trying to integrate as much as I can. And I'm running a marathon and not running a sprint, and trying to do it as much as I can.
We all do, Stephen. And I'm very happy that this question, came from a student at this early level, because we tend to realize this after we become parents. You try this just like an agile project, like you plan, implement, and manage, and then go plan again. And so this is very, very critical. And I have to put a word for all of our especially mothers who working mothers. It's very difficult to have two full-time jobs. So this is something that we have to all salute. Beside that, Stephen, you mentioned some hobbies also. I know that you like hiking. And if you can tell us a bit about your hobbies, and also when did you pick up that, like an early life in college, or later on you picked that along the way, and how did you grow into that?
Yeah, so a couple different things that are important to me, and where I focus. And so I mentioned obviously my family, and so that's an area that I try to invest in. My personal faith is important to me, and also has to be time there. And then I'm a firm believer in balance. And so when things get out of balance in your life, that's when you struggle with burnout, and other things not working well. And so for me, beyond sort of the professional side, between my family, my faith, I mentioned exercise is also a way to keep me balanced. And so I've always so that's sort of what I do now. I've always been a little bit on the adventurous side, so I'm always trying new opportunities, new experiences, and so one of the things I do enjoy is getting out in nature and hiking, and trying new things. Like for example, one of the things I've never done but I really want to do is get out into the deserts, which I know some of you guys do very frequently. And we're sometime when I'm in Saudi Arabia, I'm going to get on a 4x4 and drive out into the deserts and experience that and see that, because those are new things that I want to try. Just like, you might not have ever been up a mountain with a lot of trees on it. which is something we have, and so you might want to do that when you come to the U.S. And so, trying new experiences and doing that. And so when COVID hit, I had always worked out in a gym, and that they had shut down. So I looked around my house, and the only thing I saw was a bicycle. So I took up bike riding in the last 14 months. That's been my major source of exercise. But I decided last spring I'm going to take my family on a bike trip, and so we biked about 130 miles over a few days on their spring break, just trying new experiences and testing yourself. Can you reach a challenge? Can you achieve that challenge? And so, those are things that I try to do outside of work that keeps me refreshed to come back to work. And so whether it's I guess the other thing I like to do a lot of is reading. And again, that helps refresh my mind, gives me new ideas that then allows me to tackle the workplace. And so I try to integrate all those things together to live a balanced life. And sometimes I feel like I do well on balance, and sometimes I don't do well.
Professor Stephen,
yeah,
talking about visiting Saudi, I would like to ask you about القرية النجدية. Professor Ausif, you may remind Professor Stephen about it.
Well, I told them a little story and they got so intrigued about it. Well, when Stephen came, the first day I met him, like we were preparing a dinner at that time, and we took him to a very traditional Saudi restaurant that had no chairs, no tables. And I was, worried for you, but you looked very adaptable, very agile, and you handled that very well. So you mentioned you miss Saudi food, and I promise you when you come, inshallah, we will. There are even better places now. We'll take you to that. And Abdulaziz and the boys now are forming a Stephen Eckel scout team. So they will take care of that desert project. But they want to know how did you reflect about our culture in general, and the food is part of the culture. So how did you reflect on that?
Yeah, I enjoy Middle Eastern culture because you put such a priority on sort of family, and you put a priority on relationships. And I remember driving, I think it was to the airport, and just seeing people pulled over to the side and having charcoal together, barbecues together. And I just thought that you wouldn't find that in the U.S. To the same degree. And so everybody's culture is different. And the way I view sort of my travels and experiences is I want to learn about other cultures. I don't want to come. For me, I don't want to come to Saudi or any place in the Middle East or Asia or wherever I'm going and experience a Western experience. I want to have local cuisine. I want to eat it like the way they do, and enjoy being together and learning from people. So for me, understanding the culture is always important. Yeah, it's not normal for me to sit on the ground and eat with my hands, but the reality is that's traditional for others, and so I want to experience and do it. I want to learn from their culture. And then I also want to develop relationships with fellow pharmacists, because we might be at a professional meeting. You guys might come to an ASHP mid-year. I might go to an FIP, or I might be in Saudi for a meeting, and you never know where paths will cross. And so I want to sort of experience and develop those relationships. So from my side, yeah, I'm open for anything, to try something new, and learn new experiences.
I assure you, next visit will be even more exciting and more scrumptious dishes.
That's right.
Inshallah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Go to the camel souk. I might want to go to camel races. You never know where new experiences will be.
Well, I think you've done your homework, Stephen. Like, there are places that I have never been too, and I hope Abdulaziz will be able to arrange for both of us then.
There you go.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
I'll be there, inshallah. Is there any last questions, guys? Anyone would like to participate?
Yes, I have a question. Hello, Dr. Steve.
Hello.
It's nice to meet you. I have a question for you. From your opinion, what's the essential skills and abilities needs to be that's needed when the one or someone wants to be in an academic field?
Yeah. So, I mean, if one wants to go after academia, you need to be a domain expert in whatever you want to do. So in the U.S., there's really kind of two major tracks. There's a predominant research track, and there's a predominant teaching track. So if you want to go down the research track, that's probably going to require a PhD and good research skills. And so you're really going to have to become a domain expert in whatever area that you want to research. And then also in the US, we have teaching tracks. And so if you're going to go down that track, you've got to be an expert in what you're teaching on. And for some degree, you've got to publish and become a national expert in that. So that's generally speaking, you sort of have to decide which way you want to go and proceed down that pathway. And it's really, there's no right way or wrong way or better choice, not as good of a choice. It's really what are you passionate about, and depending upon what you're passionate about, that's what you would do to focus on.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much, Professor Aus.
Thank you so much, Prof. Stephen.
You're welcome.
We would like to thank you about the time that you gave us. It was really special for you to be here with us, and hopefully, inshallah, won't be the last time.
That's right. And if you want to send me an email and ask any more questions, I'm more than willing and happy to do that for you.
Thank you so much. If you may, can you give us a last take-home message?
Yeah. I mean, pharmacy is a small world, and never know where paths might cross, both within your country as well as outside your country. And so, invest in the relationships, become an expert in what you do, and always remember the patient. So, for me, I never know where my paths might cross, and I might see you guys again in different settings. So, always feel comfortable reaching out, and I would do the same for you if I see you. And you never know where the profession might lead any of us, but it's a small profession, a lot of great relationships, but also always remember the patient.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate.
Well, thank you for the invitation. This is great. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. You have always been generous, with your time, and you treat everybody like they are special. So this is something that is inspiring, I think, and our students, maybe, one important lesson they learned today is being, humble enough to people that are inferior to yourself. And this is something that, we really appreciate from you, like sitting with our students and talking to them in spite of, your busy schedule, and they cannot imagine the responsibilities you have. But this is a great lesson that our students, I'm sure, they learn and appreciate. And to pass along that, one day they will be on the other side of the table or of Zoom here, and they should pass that also to the next generation following them. So thank you for your time again, and wish you a great day ahead of you, and great evening.
Thank you very much.
For the rest, yeah.
Thank you so much for attending.
All right. Well, to see everybody later.
See you. Bye. See you.
All right. Bye-bye.
الله يعطيكم العافية جميعا على حضوركم، شكرا لكم وعلى وقتكم. هذه كانت جرعتنا للسنة هذه، وإن شاء الله عقبال السنوات الجاية نشوفكم على خير إن شاء الله.